All right, Gator fans, I am here with Larry Blustein. And Larry, this is a blast from the past for me. Larry is the godfather of high school recruiting in the state of Florida. And when years and years and years ago, when I would report for Sun Sports and
Yeah.
Spectrum, which was Bright House and Time Warner back then, Larry would talk to me on the sidelines, tell me all the scoop about all of the good guys playing in whatever game we were watching. And I learned so much about high school football when I was very, very green from you.
Well, I appreciate it, Allie. It's really good seeing you again. We missed you in the industry. You were very knowledgeable, bright face, and yeah, you weren't a know it all, and that was the best thing. You would always ask and yeah, now the mom of four, so it's a whole different world you're in.
It is. It's a whole different world for a lot of reasons, right? College
Right.
football and high school football have changed so much. We have NIL, we have the transfer portal. I've talked to a lot of high school coaches recently, and they all tell me that they feel like the transfer portal was incredibly detrimental to high school recruiting. What are you
Yeah.
seeing?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, it's changed the entire landscape, and the loyalty is out of it now. A lot of the high school recruiting is a lot tougher because you get down to a situation where do you want a 20-year-old kid that's got 2, 3 years under his belt, or do you want a 17-year-old kid who's never taken a class, never been in the mainstream of college, and only the elite, quote unquote 5 and 4 stars are that have a place in college football right now because of the fact that anybody else down the line they're going to be replaced by the portal. And you look at, I know that there's a couple of schools that are a little bit reluctant, like Clemson, to do it, but they're going to find out that as long as this hangs around, you got to keep pace with everybody. And it's a weird situation because it's tougher on everybody. And I know that, and I hear from the parents all the time because of the fact that they don't know what to do because they're out in the middle of nowhere. And all and the thing is, Allie, is it's gotten out of hand to the point where the portal is 100 times more athletes that are in that portal that are going to play anywhere. And to me, my biggest criticism, and I tell the kids this all the time: if you have a scholarship to a school, why would you leave? I mean, let things play out. Because and mom and dad aren't going to be really excited about it. So yeah, it's really changed so much.
So I think another compounding factor is everybody got an extra year of eligibility because of COVID. So that caused this kind of like backlog. So the transfer portal already caused issues, but we see guys, they're transferring for the fourth time. This is their ninth year in college football or their eighth year in college football. At some point, does that kind of re-regulate maybe a little bit because those kids that had those extra time from COVID are finally out of eligibility?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good point because, I mean, especially in Miami, you have a guy that's going into his ninth year. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you're in a situation where, uh, yeah,
I'm hoping
and
it's
the
like
whole
3
thing.
degrees.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, usually ninth year means you're in medical school by
Right,
now. But
right.
uh, but my point is this: and the NCAA has kind of blown the whole thing. I mean, they really have. NIL, they've never gotten involved from the beginning of it, which is crazy. And no one ever said that the college athletes shouldn't be making money because they should. I
Right.
mean, but let's face it. Having a couple $100 in your pocket to maybe buy some clothes or take somebody out for dinner, or is a little different than having Caleb Williams, who was weighing his options between USC and going into the NFL. And here's a guy right now who is a senior in college, and he had Wendy's, Nissan, Dr. Pepper commercials, and he's still taking English 4, in college. So to me, that's the thing that changed. It got out of hand. And now the NCAA can't really come in there because of the fact there'll be so many lawsuits,
Yeah.
that they should have stepped in early. and I'm a big advocate of with the transfer portal that I think it would change a lot if the kids had to sit out a year.
Mm.
And I know that some people would agree. A lot of people say, "Oh no," but I think that's the only way right now that you're going to ever really get this under control, because somebody's going to think twice about transferring if they have to wait a year, because
Yep.
that year, as you know, is a long time. I mean, it really is, because when you
Mhm.
get done playing in December of, let's say, 23, and you sit out all the way, the 24 season, you don't play until 25. It's almost a year and a half. So I think that would be a great deterrent. But I mean, that's just me, because I think that it would curb all this stuff that's going on, and at least the college coaches, when they have a board in their office, could keep something, of a sanity. Because right now, what do you do? I mean, you don't know if you're, right tackle and left tackle. Look at Alabama, and look at Washington just over the last couple of weeks. They lost 23 kids. Somebody had a plan, and,
Yeah.
and it's just, and I blame Miami on both accounts, because Manny Diaz started the transfer portal when he went and got these kids, to come out, and he was the first one. Then they started with the NIL when De'Aaron King, the quarterback that came from Houston, he signed a deal to appear at some clubs and sign autographs for money, and then it morphed into craziness. And yeah, it's way out of hand. I don't know, but what do you do? Who's going to take control?
One of the high school coaches that I speak to on a regular basis told me that he would really suggest a certain number of scholarships dedicated to high school players and a certain number dedicated to transfer portal kids, because he said the damage it's doing to high school sports is so extreme. He gave me an example. He said that the week before this year's early signing day, they had 4 college coaches on their campus. The year before, they had 74
Oh
separate
yeah, oh yeah,
programs on
yeah.
their college campus. And that's, I mean, that's not sustainable for the sport, truly. And it, it makes it really hard for these high school families. But this upcoming year is the first year that NIL is going to be legal in high school. Do we have any idea how that is going to work?
Not very good. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I mean, you imagine, these kids. I mean, they're 17 years old. They're 18 at the most, and they're going to be making these decisions with a lot of money on the table. I think it's going to just add to the, college football. And man, it's just not football. It's every sport now. I see, gymnasts and baseball players and women. Look at Caitlin Clark. She's got to be making $8 million with all the things that she has going. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no ceiling to this, Allie. And I mean, especially if it gets into high school, you're going to have these kids making the decision. That's gonna, it's gonna shake up everybody. And I don't agree with it. But I'm just in the minority, I guess.
I think something that's going to be so interesting, the FHSAA finalized their classifications for 2024 and 2025 today.
Right.
I know they put out the preliminary in December, but are we going to get into a situation where if when NIL hits high school, these programs and these communities with money are going to be able to buy whatever high school players they want at that point?
Right.
And so then do we redo and have to think about classifications based on income of zip codes? Because you could have a school the same size, but if your school doesn't have the ability to buy the players to go there, you're not going to be competitive anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the same as college is now. The rich get richer, and it's been like that for a lot of years. Where I mean, once in a while you'll get a program like Utah or SMU or Houston or somebody like that will kind of rise above. But the big boys in the game financially, the Floridas, the Alabamas, the Tennessees, the Ohio States, Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, they have a distinct advantage, and I think in the high school world, a lot of people are talking about, here's Shaman Amadana, who, I mean, they've set a record. They've been to state championships 8 years in a row, and from where I see, they could go at least 12 because they just got 11 kids in the last 10 days, all high level kid, the number one 2026 kid, for in the state of Florida as a wide receiver. They just had the number one 2024 wide receiver and Jeremiah Smith, who ended up going to Ohio State, and yet they're in the same classification as Clearwater Central Catholic, who they played in the state championship. And it was a Clearwater Central Catholic team that was pretty good. And I
Yeah.
saw them earlier in the year. They beat Cardinal Gibbons in Fort Lauderdale, and they just got trampled, 56-0. They
Yeah.
were undefeated. Yeah, it's going to be awfully tough. I mean, I really, and here's Chaminade. They have 410 students.
Sure.
So so what are you going to do? I mean, you can't, so and they're playing schools with four times the population that they have. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to be tough.
You have advised recruits for, decades at this point. How do you advise a high school kid today in the climate that we have right now versus how you would 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you asked that because today we had a event over the weekend in Fort Lauderdale. Our prep red zone held a combine, and the parents were just, you know, inundating me over and over again, and not wanting to talk so much about the combine. But, what do we do? I mean, there's a couple of, I think there was like 15, 24 athletes there, and they're in a situation now that, they don't know what to do. But I think what's going to happen is you look at some of the Division two, the 1AA's type of schools, FCS, like a North Dakota State or South Dakota State or a Montana or Furman, programs like that. They're going to flourish a lot more because they're going to get, these kids are going to be pushed down, the pipe, because there's no room at 1A anymore. So you're in a situation where, you look at, like, here's Kaiser University. I mean, 5 years old. They just won a national NAIA championship out of West Palm Beach. And they have kids on the roster that probably could play, at a group of five school. But
Yeah.
because everything's been pushed down and the athletes are getting forced into, playing at a different level, it's benefiting the smaller schools. And that's why, probably the most important part of the off season is going to be these small college recruiting fairs, because, these athletes are going to fall into their lap.
Yeah.
So they're not complaining as much as,
That's
a
true.
lot of the Power Five schools are. And is it going to be Power Five much longer? What's going to happen to the state of college football? Is there going to be two conferences pretty soon? It's there. The things have changed so much now that your rivalries are at stake. I
Yeah.
mean, the only thing that's saving, here's Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. They've played forever. They're not going to be playing because Oklahoma goes into the SEC and Oklahoma State stays in the Big 12. Thank goodness for, programs like USC and UCLA, which stayed together,
Sure.
going into the Big 10, so they'll be able to still play. But it's taken away all these rivalries, and, sooner or later, you're going to see Florida State and Florida maybe not play anymore because of the fact that Florida State and Florida are going to have such crazy schedules that they don't want to play. And it's going to be sacrilegious, because if you look back when Miami and Florida back in the day, they played almost all the time, but
Yeah.
then it dictated why Florida and Miami are saying, well, what do we need to get this game for? I
Sure.
mean, that's too tough a game. Let's pick up, Citadel or somebody like that. So yeah, it's all become a money issue, and that. I mean, it started a long time ago, and you look at the bowl games. What's going to be the state of the bowl games?
Yeah.
You're going to have all these companies who are paying millions and millions to sponsor it, or all of a sudden going to say, hey, what are we going to sponsor a game where these kids,
Opt out.
26 of the best players aren't even playing?
Yeah.
And
happening is probably the best thing for college football long term, right? That and boosters deciding that there's no return on investment and continually paying these high NIL numbers
Yep.
without championships, and
Yep.
only one team can win a championship each
No
year. So
doubt.
a
No
lot of
doubt.
disappointed boosters with no return on
Very
investment.
much, very much, and living, being associated with the University of Florida, that's probably one of the biggest booster clubs in the country.
Yeah.
They have a lot of alumni, they have a lot of big money that they pour to all their programs, and sooner or later you're gonna get some of these. Boosters or these people who donate, and they're going to say, hey, wait, who what are we doing?
Yeah.
This, we're just wasting money. Let's spend our money elsewhere. And you're going to find that. I really do. And yeah, it's just changed so much. And who's going to slow it down? Nobody, because no one's going to want to stand in front of the train. It's just the way it is.
Let's talk a little bit more about Florida specifically. You talk to recruits all over the state. What do you think the perception of Coach Napier is?
Oh, a very likable guy. I just think that the whole thing is Florida is kind of, if you're a Gator fan, you kind of been let down the last couple of years. And obviously, ironically, it probably happened after the Alabama game where they played a pretty decent game and everything went downhill after that. And it seems like they haven't really recovered since then. But the one thing that a lot of the recruits like, these kids buy into the facilities. They really do. More so than ever before. And as you and I were talking, I had an opportunity to go up and, see the new, everything, the new facility, indoor, everything that they've built. And the kids like that. And now what they're doing is they're hosting a lot of events. They have a lot of junior days. And the one thing about Coach Napier, he's been in that position where he's had a recruit, not as a head coach, but as an assistant.
Sure.
And that's where I met him. Always, grinding away. He's a personable guy, and the kids seem to gravitate towards that. And I think it's all it's missing is for them to put together winning seasons. And I think that'll come because I think that, especially building on this recruiting class, and you get a legitimate quarterback and DJ Lagway, who I think he's one of the best in the country. The kid's a big time prospect, but you got to be able to hold on to kids too.
Sure.
They lost a marquee running back that we thought that would be there for 3-4 years, and then he's gone all of a sudden.
Mhm.
That's the one thing, it's consistency, and Florida doesn't want to. Florida doesn't want to go FSU's route. And I can't blame them. Florida. You look at Florida State, and they built their entire team off of the portal. They very few, kids. And you look in the recent, I think over the last year or so, a lot of those kids who were recruited as freshmen, they left.
Yeah.
It's like A&M. Everybody was talking about what a great job Jimbo Fisher was doing, but those two hefty classes, 80% of those kids left before he did. And yeah, but I think the perception of Florida, because they roll out the mat and they have a lot of good things that attract people on campus, and I think that the more that they meet the staff, and they have a really good staff, and I think that all the pieces are in place. I just think right now that they have to start implementing a lot of these guys, and a lot of these guys that they brought in are going to have to start coming through, because certainly their schedule's not going to get any easier. And, teams like Georgia and South Carolina are going to continue to add to what they have, and that's just the way it is. But to answer your question, uh, he's liked. And the high school coaches like him too, because he's an honest person. If he's not just gonna blow smoke just to get your kid on, to get your kid to come. He's, because sooner or later you're going to, if you start, telling untruths, it's going to catch up to you. And he's learned that. And you know what? Like Mario Cristobal said to me, you spend time with Nick Saban like they have, like both of them have, for an extended period of time. If you bite your tongue enough, you're going to come out on the other end and be in a much better coach because, here's a guy that teaches life lessons. He's a genius at football. He's like a great doctor with an average bedside manner. He just, he's tough to get along with. But if you could just, hang in there like Billy did and like Mario Cristobal did, and you just become better on the other side. And I think he benefited, as you saw what he did at Louisiana. He's just a better coach and a better person and more understanding of what needs to be done to build a winner.
Before I let you go, you mentioned DJ Lagway, and I think that there's a great chance we see him some next season. I think Graham Mertz is obviously the solidified starter, but I think that working in a package for him, get his feet wet in the SEC, learn under Mertz, who really ended up being a really good leader for UF, will definitely happen. But I'm also thinking that we will probably see a good amount of LJ McCray.
Yeah.
Obviously, a Florida kid. Tell us a little bit about what we're getting with McCray.
Yeah, big time kid. I remember when he was 5 or 6 years old. His dad used to be a high school football coach down in South Florida at Boyd Anderson before he moved up to Bethune-Cookman, and kid's a huge athlete. I mean, you watch him play tight end. He loves to do different things, but he's a man child, and it's going to be tough to keep him off. He reminds me of the equal of what the kid Ruben Bain did to Miami last year, becoming freshman of the year in the ACC. You just can't park somebody like that on the bench. And McCray is just a tremendous athlete. He's an excellent football player, good guy, and that's what they need. Really good. They need good people in the locker room, because their leadership right now is kind of like on rocky footing. And you bring up Graham Mertz. Here's a guy that a lot of people were attacking last year. And I thought he came in and did a pretty darn good job under the circumstances. They weren't a very deep team up front. Sometimes, they had a lot of injuries. And, and I think that DJ's going to learn a lot from him just as a person, and I think that's so important, because DJ's 17 years old. He's coming in as a high school kid, that's should be graduating in a couple of months. And but I think the guys like McCray and him, they have a lot of really good linemen that are coming in. This was a sterling class, even though they had a lot of guys drop out, or 3 or 4 drop out at the end. Those are the guys you really don't want on campus, because they would have, if they didn't go now, they would have gone in a year or so. So I think you have kids that want to be Gators, and that's the most important part.
Well, Larry, it was so wonderful catching up with you. We are going to have to do this way more often than the 20-year gap that's been, or 10-year gap, however long it's been, a very long time.
Yeah.
But tell everybody where they can check out your work, where they can follow you on social media. Guys,
Okay.
like I said at the beginning of this video, godfather of recruiting in the state of Florida.
Well, we have Prep Road Red Zone Florida, which is our statewide website. It's really good. I mean, we have rankings and a lot of player prospect things. Where as I said, we just held a camp, and we're having 5 days of like rehashing some of the kids that came, and and we had a really really good showing. We had a lot of Orlando kids, a lot of kids that are on the verge of being Power 5 and Group of 5 kids. So we have that, and you can catch that. We have something every day. If you're interested in South Florida recruiting, Miami-Dade and Broward County, there's a lot of talent down there. I have LarryBlustein.com, free website. You can go on there and pick up a lot of information on, players that may be, coming up to Gainesville. And certainly we have a lot of things going on. And then what we do every Monday night for the last 14 years, we have a radio show on WQAM in Miami, a flagship station of the Hurricanes and Florida Panthers and the Miami Heat. So a lot of people listen to us. We have college coaches. We had Coach Napier on last year, and we got Coach Norvell, who becomes a bother because he has my cell number, and he'll always call up and say, "Hey, listen, we need to get on the show to promote this and that." And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And we have all the athletes. We have really good athletes. We had DJ Lagway on in November, talking about his his commitment. So a lot of good things on Twitter. It's Blustein Recruiting. check us out. We promote like up to like 150 kids a month off of that, so you'll be able to see prospective kids with their film and with their social media. And then we have our Facebook too, which we do. I mean, may be outdated to some, but we still use it, and a lot of people love it. I find that the parents spend more time on
Yes.
Facebook.
Uh-huh. For sure.
so you get in there, and then we have Instagram, which is Our Boy Blue, BLU. And we do a lot of photos. We've been doing is a lot of old time stuff. Like for Florida State, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So, hey, listen, we have it done, and I appreciate you having us on. And yeah, we love to come back on again.
Well, we are definitely going to have to talk more as the off season goes on. There'll be lots of recruiting for the 2025 class heating up.
Yep.
So we will definitely do this again. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and talk to you soon.
My pleasure, Allie. Thank you.